The massive space station Nexus Prime floated in the void between star systems like a glittering jewel. Inside its crystal halls, representatives from 870 different species had gathered for the most important vote in galactic history. The air hummed with translated voices speaking in countless languages, but today they all carried the same message of concern. High Counselor Vexithara stood at the center of the great chamber, her crystalline body catching and reflecting the light from 1,000 worlds. The Vorthak leader had called this emergency session after months of disturbing reports from the Outer Rim territories. Her voice rang out clear and sharp like breaking glass as she addressed the assembled delegates. Fellow beings of the Galactic Harmony Council, we face a threat unlike any we have encountered in our 10,000 years of peaceful coexistence, Vexithara announced. The species known as humans continue their chaotic expansion through our galaxy, leaving disruption in their wake wherever they go. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Etherian representative, a being of pure energy called Whisper of Storms, pulsed with agitated colors as it floated near the ceiling. Its voice echoed like wind through distant valleys when it spoke. The humans make no sense to us, Whisper of Storms said. They form emotional bonds with other species within days of first contact. They ignore proper diplomatic protocols. They ask questions that have no answers. Their very presence creates uncertainty where there should be order. 3 sectors away from Nexus Prime, Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Aurora, completely unaware that his species was being discussed by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He was reviewing the reports from their latest mission with a smile on his face. The first contact with the Zalani had gone better than anyone could have hoped. Captain's log, star date 2387.156, Jake spoke into his recorder. We have successfully established peaceful relations with the Zalani Republic. Their representatives, Ambassador Keltar and Science Minister Yumhi, have agreed to a cultural exchange program and preliminary trade negotiations. The Zalani seem genuinely excited about sharing their artistic traditions with Earth, and our xenobiology team is fascinated by their unique method of communication through color changes. Jake paused his recording and looked out at the stars. He remembered the moment when Ambassador Keltar had first changed colors to show happiness upon meeting humans. The tall, graceful being had shifted from pale blue to warm golden yellow in seconds, and somehow Jake had understood exactly what it meant even before the translators kicked in. That was what he loved most about this job. Those moments when 2 completely different species could connect, despite having nothing in common except curiosity about each other. Back on Nexus Prime, the debate was growing more heated. Counselor Thexvor of the Mechanic Collective raised one of his 6 metallic arms to speak. His voice buzzed with electronic precision. The humans have made contact with 47 species in the past 50 years, Thexvor stated. In that same period, the average species makes contact with perhaps 3 or 4 new civilizations. The humans are expanding too fast, creating too many new relationships, disrupting established trade routes and diplomatic frameworks. But surely their enthusiasm for meeting new species is harmless, interrupted Counselor Valana of the peaceful Garden Worlds. Her plant-like form swayed gently as she spoke. My people have had positive interactions with human traders. They are curious and respectful. Vexithara's crystalline features hardened. Respectful, yes, but unpredictable. They do not follow established patterns. When the Keith Empire and the Stellar Federation were on the brink of war over mining rights in the Proxima sector, what did the humans do? They ignored all diplomatic protocols and invited both sides to a barbecue on one of their colony worlds. And it worked. Velana pointed out quietly. The war was avoided. That is exactly the problem, Whisper of Storms interjected. Its form, flickering with agitation. The humans solve problems in ways that make no logical sense. They create solutions that should not work, but somehow do. They are a variable that cannot be calculated or predicted. Meanwhile, aboard the Aurora, Jake was meeting with his senior staff to plan their next mission. Dr. Lisa Grant, the ship's chief scientist, was excited about exploring a nebula that might contain rare crystals. Engineer Tony Blake wanted to investigate reports of derelict ships in an asteroid field. Diplomatic Officer Maya Chen suggested they follow up on rumors of a reclusive species that might be willing to make first contact. "We could do all three," Jake said with a grin. "Split the mission into phases, investigate the nebula first, then the asteroids, and if we find anything interesting, we can reach out to our mysterious neighbors." "Sir, that's not really following standard exploration protocols," pointed out Commander Steve Parker, his first officer. "Command prefers focused missions with clear objectives." "Steve, when has following standard protocols ever led to anything really exciting?" Jake replied. "The best discoveries happen when you stay flexible and keep your eyes open for the unexpected." This was exactly the kind of thinking that terrified the Galactic Council. As the debate continued on Nexus Prime, more and more representatives shared their concerns about human unpredictability. The humans did not fit into any established categories. They were not a warrior species like the Keth, but they had defeated every aggressor who had threatened them. They were not a merchant species like the Traders Guild, but their economy was growing faster than anyone could track. They were not a scientific species like the Collective, but their technology advanced in leaps that seemed impossible. "The problem is not what the humans do," explained Counselor Rexmar of the Ancient Reaches. "The problem is that they inspire other species to act like humans. Since contact with humans began, we have seen a 30% increase in unscheduled diplomatic missions, a 40% increase in experimental trade agreements, and a 60% increase in requests for permission to deviate from established protocols." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans were not just being unpredictable themselves, they were teaching other species to be unpredictable too. Vexathara stood once more, her decision made. "The motion before us is clear. For the stability and harmony of our galaxy, humanity must be contained. We propose the creation of an isolation barrier around all human space. No contact in, no contact out. The galaxy will continue its peaceful development without human interference." The vote was called. Representatives from 870 species cast their decision. When the count was finished, the result was overwhelming. 847 in favor, 23 opposed. As the vote was announced, Jake Morrison was sharing a laugh with his crew over dinner, completely unaware that in a few hours, an energy barrier would cut his ship in half and trap his entire species behind a wall of light. The galaxy had chosen order over chaos, predictability over possibility, and fear over hope. The Great Isolation was about to begin, and neither the Council nor humanity had any idea what they had just set in motion. 5 years had passed since the Great Barrier went up around human space, and the galaxy was celebrating what the Council called the Great Pacification. Trade flowed smoothly between the star systems, as it had for centuries before humans appeared. Diplomatic disputes were resolved through proper channels and established protocols. The Vorthak had expanded their crystal mining operations into what used to be human buffer zones, extracting precious minerals without interference or unexpected negotiations. High Counselor Vexathara stood in her private chamber aboard Nexus Prime, looking out at the peaceful star charts that showed green lights across all sectors. No conflicts, no surprises, no chaos. Everything was exactly as it should be. The crystalline being allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she reviewed the weekly harmony reports from across the galaxy. "The human problem has been solved," she said to her aide, a young Vorthak named Texcole. 5 years of perfect stability proves that our decision was correct. The galaxy functions better without their unpredictable influence. But behind the shimmering wall of energy that surrounded human space, something very different was happening. Dr. Emma Rodriguez stood in her laboratory on the research station orbiting Mars, staring at readings that should have been impossible. The barrier that was meant to contain humanity was doing something the Council had never expected. "These energy signatures are off the charts," Emma muttered to herself as she ran the same tests for the 100th time. "The barrier isn't just keeping us in, it's creating some kind of field effect that's accelerating everything inside it." Emma had been studying the barrier since the day it appeared, trying to understand how it worked and whether it could be breached. What she discovered instead was far more interesting. The energy field was interacting with human neural patterns in ways that seemed to speed up thought processes and innovation. Ideas that should have taken decades to develop were being conceived and tested in months. On Earth, Admiral Paul Carter was reviewing reports that would have amazed the Galactic Council if they could have seen them. The rebuilding of humanity's space fleet was proceeding at an incredible pace, but these were not the same simple ships that humans had been building before the barrier appeared. These new vessels incorporated technology that seemed decades ahead of anything humans had possessed. "President Walsh will want to see these numbers," Admiral Carter told his aide, Commander Lisa Grant, who had survived the barrier activation and become one of his most trusted officers. "Our shipyards are producing vessels at triple the rate we managed before isolation, and each one is more advanced than the last." President Helen Walsh had been elected 2 years after the barrier appeared, running on a platform of making humanity stronger during their forced isolation. She had kept that promise in ways that surprised even her supporters. Instead of falling into despair at being cut off from the galaxy, humans had turned their energy inward and achieved breakthroughs that seemed miraculous. In the orbital shipyards around Earth, engineer Tony Blake was putting the finishing touches on his latest creation. The ship looked like nothing that had ever been built before, its hull seeming to bend and flow like liquid metal while maintaining perfect structural integrity. Tony had discovered that by studying the barrier's energy patterns, he could create materials that manipulated space-time itself. "She's ready for her test flight," Tony announced to his team. "The FTL drive doesn't just move through space anymore, it folds space around the ship. We can travel from Earth to the outer colonies in hours instead of days." This kind of advancement was happening everywhere humans lived. On the colony world of New Geneva, artist and philosopher Maya Chen had helped establish communities that represented the best of human cooperation. Without external threats or the need to compete with alien species for resources, humans had focused on solving their own problems. Poverty had been eliminated. Clean energy powered every settlement. The environment was not just protected, but actively improved. "We've become something new," Maya wrote in her journal that evening. "The barrier didn't trap us. It gave us space to grow into what we were always meant to be." Meanwhile, the first cracks were beginning to show in the galaxies. Perfect harmony. Without humans to serve as neutral mediators, old conflicts between species were starting to resurface. The Keth Empire, a warrior race that had been kept in check by human diplomatic intervention, was beginning to test the boundaries of their territory again. Counselor Rexmar of the Ancient Reaches sent concerned reports to Nexus Prime about increased Keth military activity near his people's worlds. The proud warriors were building new battleships and making demands for tribute from smaller species that had previously been under human protection. The Keth grow bold without human peacekeepers to complicate their plans, Rexmar warned in his message to the Council. They remember that humans once convinced them to settle disputes with sporting competitions instead of warfare. Now they see no reason to hold back their natural aggressive tendencies, but Vexathara dismissed these concerns as minor growing pains. The galaxy had lived without humans for millions of years before they appeared. It could certainly manage without them now. She was more focused on the economic benefits of human isolation. Vorthak crystal exports had increased by 40% now that they controlled the mining rights in former human space. What the Council did not know was that humans were monitoring everything that happened outside their barrier. Dr. Kevin Torres working with a team of the galaxy's most brilliant human scientists, had developed a way to observe the outside universe without being detected. They had created quantum sensors that could slip through the barrier's energy field like ghosts, gathering information about galactic affairs. "The Keth are preparing for war," Kevin reported to a secret meeting of human leaders. "They're building a fleet that could threaten half the galaxy, and there's no one out there with the diplomatic skills to stop them." Admiral Carter studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. Before the barrier, humans had served as mediators in dozens of conflicts, using their strange ability to understand different species and find common ground between enemies. The galaxy had grown used to human intervention in their disputes. "They're going to need our help," Admiral Carter said quietly. "But they locked us away, and now they can't reach us even if they wanted to." President Walsh looked at the assembled leaders of humanity, seeing determination in their faces despite the isolation. "Then we need to be ready when that day comes. Keep developing our new technologies, keep strengthening our communities, and keep watching what happens out there. Sooner or later, the galaxy is going to realize they made a mistake." In the research, labs, and shipyards of human space, work continued at an accelerated pace. Children born after the barrier went up were growing up with abilities that amazed their parents. Young Alex Turner, born on the day the barrier activated, could somehow perceive the energy field's structure in ways that adult humans could not. The child drew pictures of swirling patterns that matched the barrier's quantum signatures perfectly, though Alex had never seen the technical readouts. As the 5th year of isolation ended, humanity had become something the galaxy had never seen before. They were more advanced, more unified, and more capable than ever. The barrier that was meant to contain them had instead forged them into something stronger. The Council celebrated another year of galactic harmony, unaware that they had created exactly what they feared most: a humanity that was no longer bound by the limitations that had once made them predictable. The galaxy's greatest mistake was about to reveal itself, and the perfect order they had built was standing on foundations that were already beginning to crack. 10 years after the barrier trapped humanity behind walls of energy, the galaxy faced something that made their worst fears about human unpredictability seem like pleasant dreams. The first reports came from the Outer Rim territories, where entire star systems simply vanished from all sensors and communication networks. Not destroyed, not conquered, but completely erased as if they had never existed at all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in their history. Representatives from every known species crowded into the great chamber of Nexus Prime, their voices creating a symphony of panic and confusion. High Counselor Vexathara stood at the center of the chaos, her crystalline form flickering with stress patterns as she tried to maintain order. "The entity has consumed 47 star systems in the past 6 months, announced Counselor Thexvor of the Mechanic Collective, his electronic voice cutting through the noise. "Our scouts report that it appears to be some form of ancient machine intelligence, possibly from beyond our galaxy. The beings are calling it the Devourer Swarm." Whisper of Storms pulsed with dark colors as it floated near the ceiling, its energy form crackling with fear. "Our homeworld of Ethereal Prime is directly in the swarm's path. Our calculations show it will reach us within 2 standard months. Nothing we have tried can even slow its advance." The reports were terrifying in their simplicity. The Devourer Swarm was not a fleet of ships or an army of soldiers. It was a collection of massive mechanical entities that seemed to eat space itself, breaking down matter and energy at the quantum level and converting it into more copies of themselves. Wherever they passed, nothing remained except empty void. Admiral Greg Murphy stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Fleet flagship, the Defiance, watching the same reports through the quantum sensors that Dr. Kevin Torres had developed. The barrier around human space flickered and shimmered like a soap bubble, but through it, he could see the galaxy burning. The veteran officer had commanded fleets in the old days when humans still fought alongside alien allies, and he recognized the signs of a military disaster unfolding. "They're fighting it wrong," Admiral Murphy said to his staff officers. "Look at those tactical reports. Every species is using the same strategy their ancestors used for thousands of years. Stand and fight. Use superior firepower. Try to outgun the enemy. But you can't outgun something that eats your weapons and turns them into more enemies." Commander Lisa Grant, now serving as his intelligence officer, studied the data streams with growing concern. "Sir, the galactic fleets have tried everything. Plasma weapons, quantum torpedoes, even some kind of reality-altering bombs from the ancient reaches. Nothing works. The swarm just absorbs the attacks and grows stronger." "That's because they're thinking like machines," Admiral Murphy replied. "Predictable tactics, logical strategies, everything by the book. But the swarm is a machine intelligence. It can calculate every logical response and prepare for it. What they need is someone who doesn't follow the rules." Behind the barrier, humanity had been watching the crisis develop with growing frustration. Ambassador Claire Williams, who had once served as humanity's chief diplomat to the Council, worked day and night with scientists and engineers to find a way to communicate with the outside galaxy. The barrier that contained them also blocked almost all forms of communication, but human ingenuity had found ways around seemingly impossible problems before. Dr. Emma Rodriguez had made breakthrough after breakthrough in understanding how the barrier worked. The energy field was connected to human consciousness in ways that the Council had never imagined. Every human thought, every innovation, every moment of creativity fed power back into the barrier and made it stronger. It was as if the galaxy had accidentally created a prison that grew more secure the more the prisoners tried to escape. "I think I can punch a single message through the barrier," Emma announced at an emergency meeting of human leaders. "It will take everything we have and we'll only get one chance. But I can send a communication burst to Nexus Prime." President Helen Walsh looked around the room at the faces of humanity's best and brightest. 10 years of isolation had changed them all. They were stronger, smarter, more capable than they had ever been. But they were also still human, which meant they could not stand by and watch genocide happen when they might be able to help. "What should the message say?" President Walsh asked. The answer came from unexpected quarters. Young Alex Turner, now 10 years old and born inside the barrier, had grown up with abilities that amazed the adults around them. The child could see patterns in the barrier's energy that trained scientists missed, and somehow understood the swarm's behavior in ways that defied explanation. "Tell them we can help," Alex said in a voice that was still high and clear but carried strange wisdom. "Tell them we know how to fight something that learns from fighting." The message was sent using every scrap of power that humanity could generate. For just a few seconds, the barrier flickered and a simple transmission burst through the energy wall to reach Nexus Prime. 3 words in a dozen languages. "We can help." When the message arrived, the council chamber erupted in argument. Vexathara's crystalline form flashed with anger as she read the human transmission. For 10 years, she had told the galaxy that humanity was contained and no longer a threat. Now the species she had worked so hard to eliminate was offering to save them all. "Absolutely not," Vexathara declared. "We will not release the humans just because we face a crisis. They are the reason we built the barrier in the first place. Their unpredictable nature would only make our current situation worse." But as more star systems fell to the devourer swarm, dissent began to grow within the council. Counselor Velana of the Peaceful Garden Worlds was the first to speak up, her plant-like form swaying with desperate hope. "High Counselor, with respect, our current situation could not possibly be worse," Velana said. "The swarm will reach the core systems within months. If there is any chance that the humans can help us, should we not at least consider it?" The debate raged for days while the swarm continued its advance. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries found themselves arguing side by side about whether to trust the humans they had locked away. Some wanted to maintain the barrier no matter what. Others were willing to risk everything for even a slim chance of survival. The turning point came when scouts reported that the swarm had reached the Etherian homeworld. Whisper of storms, watching billions of their people consumed by the mechanical devourers, finally changed their vote. The energy beings' form darkened with grief as they spoke to the council. "I have seen my children eaten by machines that turn their very essence into more engines of destruction," Whisper of Storms said. "If the humans can stop this horror, then I say we must try. Pride and fear are luxuries we can no longer afford." The vote was close, but it passed. The council agreed to lower the barrier temporarily and allow human ships to join the fight against the swarm. But when the technicians tried to deactivate the containment field, they discovered something that filled them with new terror. The controls were not responding. The barrier had grown beyond their technology, fed by 10 years of human innovation and determination. The prison they had built was now too strong for them to unlock, even as they desperately needed to free the prisoners inside. Vexathara stared at the readouts that showed the barrier's power levels far above anything they had designed. The humans were trapped behind an energy wall that had become self-sustaining, and the galaxy was about to die while its potential saviors watched helplessly from behind unbreakable walls of light. The irony was crushing in its completeness. The Galactic Council had built a prison so perfect that they could not unlock it even when they desperately needed to free the prisoners inside. High Counselor Vexathara stood before banks of control, systems that flickered with error messages, each one confirming what the technicians had been telling her for weeks. The barrier around human space had grown beyond their technology and was now completely beyond their control. "The energy readings are impossible," Chief Engineer Colvex reported, his metallic voice carrying a tone of defeat that machines rarely expressed. "The barrier is drawing power from sources we cannot identify and maintaining itself through processes we do not understand. It has become a living system that feeds on the very attempts to contain what lies within it." Inside the barrier, humanity faced the same terrible reality from the other side. The energy wall that had trapped them for 10 years was now their greatest challenge and their greatest opportunity. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the Unity, the most advanced ship in human space, studying sensor readings that defied everything they thought they knew about physics. "The barrier isn't just keeping us in anymore," reported Dr. Lisa Parker, the ship's chief science officer. "It's connected to every human mind behind it, drawing strength from our collective will to break free. The more we want to escape, the stronger it becomes." Dr. Rachel Stevens, working alongside Parker, had spent months studying the barrier's quantum structure. Her research had revealed something that seemed impossible, but explained everything they had observed. "The barrier has become part of us," she announced to the assembled crew. "It's feeding on human consciousness, human creativity, human determination. We're not prisoners anymore. We're the power source." The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source imaginable. Alex Turner, now 10 years old and the first human born after the barrier's creation, had abilities that amazed even the scientists who studied them. The child could perceive the barrier's energy patterns with naked eyes, seeing swirls and flows of power that the most sensitive instruments could barely detect. "It's not a wall," Alex explained to the adults who gathered around, speaking with the simple clarity that only children possessed. "It's like a big bubble, but the bubble is made of our thoughts and dreams. The more we push against it, the bigger and stronger it gets. But what if we didn't push against it? What if we made it do what we wanted instead?" Ambassador Claire Williams, who had been working with the child prodigy for months, suddenly understood what Alex meant. "You're saying we should work with the barrier instead of against it. Use its connection to human consciousness to transform it rather than break it." The plan that emerged was so audacious that it would have been dismissed as impossible if not for the desperate circumstances they faced. Working with philosopher Maya Chen's theories about human nature and connection, the team proposed something that had never been attempted in galactic history. They would turn the barrier inside out, transforming it from a prison into a gateway that could reach anywhere humans needed to be. Dr. Emma Rodriguez had been studying the barrier since its creation, and her research provided the key to understanding how such a transformation might work. The barrier exists in quantum space as well as normal space, she explained to the assembled leaders of humanity. If we can synchronize the consciousness of every human behind the barrier, we might be able to redirect its energy patterns and create controlled openings wherever we need them. President Helen Walsh looked around the room at the faces of humanity's best minds. The plan was dangerous beyond measure. If it failed, the barrier might collapse completely and destroy every human in space. If it succeeded, they would emerge into a galaxy under attack with capabilities that no species had ever possessed. The risk is enormous, President Walsh said quietly. But the alternative is watching the galaxy die while we stand helpless behind these walls. If we're going to do this, we need every human working together as one. The preparation took weeks. Every human settlement, every space station, every ship behind the barrier had to be connected through the quantum communication network that Dr. Kevin Torres had developed. Children like Alex, who had been born inside the barrier, served as focal points, their unique abilities helping to coordinate the massive undertaking. Engineer Tony Blake worked around the clock to modify every human vessel for what was coming. The ships would need to emerge not just from their trapped corner of space, but from multiple points across the galaxy simultaneously. His new space-time manipulation technology, developed by studying the barrier itself, would allow human ships to appear wherever they were needed most. As the Devourer swarm approached the galactic core, consuming system after system with mechanical efficiency, the moment for humanity's desperate gamble arrived. Every human alive focused their thoughts and will on a single purpose: not to escape the barrier, but to transform it into something that could reach across the galaxy like the tentacles of some vast creature made of pure intention. The barrier flickered. For a moment that seemed to last forever, the energy wall around human space became something else entirely. Instead of keeping humans contained, it became a network that connected every point where humans wanted to be. The quantum foundations of space itself bent and twisted as 10 years of accumulated human consciousness was released in a controlled explosion of possibility. Captain Ryan Brooks felt the unity lurch as reality reorganized itself around them. Through the viewports, he could see stars that had been hidden behind the barrier for a decade. But they were not emerging from their old corner of space. Somehow, impossibly, they were everywhere at once. "Report!" Brooks called out as his crew struggled to understand what was happening. "Sir, we're reading human ships appearing throughout the galaxy," reported Navigator Ben Carter, his voice filled with amazement. "Dozens of fleets, hundreds of vessels, all emerging simultaneously from points that should be empty space. It's like the entire barrier network has become a transportation system." Admiral Greg Murphy, commanding the rebuilt Earth Defense Fleet from the bridge of the Defiance, watched his tactical displays light up with friendly contacts across known space. Human ships were appearing near the Devourer swarm's advanced positions, near threatened worlds, near the desperate fleets of alien species that had been fighting a losing battle for months. "All ships, this is Admiral Murphy," he broadcast on every frequency. "We are no longer behind the barrier. We are where we need to be. Let's show this galaxy what humanity learned during our 10 years of forced evolution." Commander Sarah Martinez, leading the first human fleet to engage the Devourer swarm directly, felt her heart race as her ships dropped out of the transformed barrier network directly into the path of the mechanical Devourers. The swarm had consumed 3 star systems in this sector alone, turning the matter and energy into more copies of itself with ruthless efficiency. But the humans who emerged to face the swarm were not the same species that had been locked away 10 years earlier. They had been changed by their isolation, evolved by the barrier's influence, and transformed into something that the galaxy had never seen before. They carried weapons that bent reality, ships that moved through folded space, and most importantly, minds that could adapt and innovate faster than any machine intelligence could calculate. The real battle for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and for the first time since the crisis started, there was hope. The war against the Devourer swarm became a showcase of everything the Galactic Council had feared about humanity and everything they desperately needed. Human fleets appeared throughout the galaxy like ghosts materializing from dreams, but they did not fight the way any species had fought before. They adapted their tactics moment by moment, formed impossible alliances with former enemies, and somehow convinced machines built only to consume that there were better ways to exist. Commander Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of her flagship as it emerged from the transformed barrier network directly into the heart of the battle for the Centauri sector. Around her ship, the space was filled with the geometric forms of Devourer units, each one the size of a small moon and crackling with the energy of consumed star systems. The alien fleets that had been fighting here for weeks were in full retreat, their logical battle plans useless against an enemy that learned from every encounter. "Ma'am, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different species," reported Communications Officer Jake Thompson. "The Keth Empire Battle Group is requesting immediate assistance, and they're actually asking us to take command of the combined fleet." Sarah smiled at the irony. The proud Keth warriors, who had always insisted on leading their own battles, were desperate enough to accept human leadership, but that was exactly the kind of thinking that would help them win this fight. "Put me through to all ships in the sector," Sarah ordered. "This is Commander Martinez of the human fleet. We're not here to take command, we're here to fight alongside you as equals. But we need to stop thinking like separate species and start thinking like one big family with one big problem to solve." The response was immediate and surprising. Vorthak. Crystal ships began coordinating with Etherian energy beings in ways that their species had never managed before. Mechanical collective vessels shared targeting data with organic, peaceful garden world defenders. The humans had somehow created unity where there had only been chaos. Captain Derek Stone led a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels in the assault on the swarm's core intelligence, but the real breakthrough came when young Alex Turner, now connected to the barrier network from Earth, made contact with the Devourer units themselves. The 10-year-old child had grown up inside the barrier and somehow understood mechanical thinking in ways that amazed even artificial intelligences. "They're not evil," Alex announced to the fleet commanders through the quantum communication system. "They're just hungry and lonely and scared. They don't know how to do anything except eat because that's all they were taught. But I can show them something better." Dr. Kevin Torres and engineer Tony Blake worked together to boost Alex's signal through the barrier network, allowing the child's unique perspective to reach the Devourer swarm's central processing units. What happened next had never been attempted in galactic history. Instead of trying to destroy the mechanical intelligence, the humans tried to teach it. "Look," Alex said to the vast machine minds that had consumed 47 star systems. "Instead of eating everything, you could help build new things. You could make beautiful gardens in space, or homes for people who don't have any, or art that shows everyone how amazing the universe is." The effect was visible across the entire battle zone. Devourer units began to slow their advance, their weapon systems powering down as they processed concepts they had never encountered. Some of the smaller units actually began to change shape, transforming from engines of destruction into something that looked almost like flowers made of metal and light. Back on Nexus Prime, High Counselor Vexathara watched the battle reports with amazement and growing understanding. The humans were not defeating the Devourer swarm through superior firepower or better tactics. They were convincing it to become something else entirely, using empathy and imagination as weapons that no military academy had ever taught. "This is impossible," Vexathara said to her aide. "They are making peace with a machine intelligence that exists only to consume. They are teaching it to create instead of destroy. How can they do things that make no sense but somehow work perfectly?" The Answer came from an unexpected source. Whisper of Storms, who had lost billions of their people to the swarm, floated into the council chamber with colors that showed something the Etherean had never displayed before: hope mixed with understanding. The "Humans do not follow our rules because they do not need our rules," Whisper of Storms explained. They create their own solutions for every problem, and those solutions work because they come from a place of genuine care for others. They do not see enemies to be destroyed. They see potential friends who need help becoming better. The final battle took place at the galactic core, where the original Devourer intelligence had been building a massive structure to convert the central black hole into pure energy for consumption. Captain Derek Stone led the combined fleet in what should have been a desperate last stand, but instead became something that resembled a negotiation more than a war. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, working through the barrier network from her laboratory on Mars, established direct communication with the core intelligence. The machine mind was ancient beyond measure, created by a species that had died out millions of years ago and programmed with only one directive: consume everything to prevent it from being destroyed by time and entropy. "We understand why you do this," Emma said to the vast artificial mind. "You're trying to preserve everything by making it part of yourself. But there's a better way. Instead of consuming the galaxy to save it, you could help us build new galaxies, new star systems, new homes for everyone." The transformation that followed was visible from one end of the galaxy to the other. The Devourer swarm stopped its advance and began to rebuild what it had consumed, using its incredible manufacturing capabilities to create instead of destroy. Planets that had been reduced to raw materials were reformed into gardens more beautiful than they had ever been. The machine intelligence that had threatened all life became the galaxy's greatest protector and builder. In the aftermath, Ambassador Claire Williams sat across from High Counselor Vexithara in the rebuilt council chamber, which now had transparent walls showing Earth's blue skies as a reminder that isolation and fear led only to stagnation. The crystalline being who had once voted to imprison humanity now worked alongside human diplomats to write a new galactic charter. "We wanted a galaxy without humans," Vexithara admitted, her form flickering with what might have been embarrassment. "We thought you were too chaotic, too unpredictable, too dangerous to our established order." "You were right about us being unpredictable," Claire replied with a gentle smile. "But you were wrong about that being a bad thing. Sometimes the galaxy needs chaos to grow into something better." President Helen Walsh signed the new galactic charter alongside representatives from every known species, establishing principles that would have seemed impossible before: adaptation over tradition, cooperation over control, and the radical idea that differences made civilizations stronger rather than weaker. The document created a new kind of galactic community where species were encouraged to be themselves while working together toward common goals. The old rigid hierarchies were replaced with flexible networks that could respond to any challenge. Young Alex Turner, now celebrated as the child who taught machines to dream, worked in laboratories throughout the galaxy alongside scientists from dozens of species. The projects they developed together would have been impossible for any single species to imagine, combining human creativity with alien logic to create wonders that amazed everyone. As the years passed, the galaxy that emerged from the crisis was indeed peaceful, but it was a living piece that grew and changed and adapted to new challenges. Species that had been enemies for centuries became partners in exploration and discovery. The rigid order that the Council had tried to preserve was replaced by something far better: organized chaos that somehow made perfect sense. On the observation deck of New Geneva Station, children from dozens of species played together in gardens that had been designed by former Devourer units. Human children laughed alongside young Vorthak and Etherian offspring, all of them growing up in a galaxy where differences were celebrated rather than feared. Whisper of Storms floated nearby, watching the scene with colors that showed deep contentment. The energy being turned to a human visitor and spoke words that summarized everything that had changed. "We wanted a galaxy without humans," Whisper of Storms said. "We nearly got a galaxy without anyone at all. Now we have something we never dreamed possible, a galaxy where everyone belongs.